I'm Jordan.
And I'm Rosanna.
And on this podcast, we explore how to take life off autopilot
and relentlessly pursue a life worth living together. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 8 of the Relentless Pursuit podcast, The Ritual of Breaking Bread.
Food, our favorite topic.
Food, tacos, sushi, all the good things. We take meal times pretty seriously here at our house. I cook and everybody eats dinner together pretty much 7 nights a week. It's a rare instance that one of us is missing dinner, which is great now that the kids are younger and we can kind of control meal times and that their schedules allow us to eat. Even during baseball season, we would eat together at like 4:45 before a baseball game, or we
That's
would
just
eat
so we
later.
could do it together.
Yeah, and it's for us. It's a big part of it. It's our gather, where we sit down together as a family. We try and enjoy a meal. We still have small kids, and so sometimes it's harder.
Well, there's really
than others.
2 rules at dinner. One is no singing, and the other is no dancing during dinner. And we break both just about every night.
We sure do. There's a lot of other rules that they break during dinner, but
Sure.
That's one thing that Jordan reminds me when I do spend time cooking and preparing a meal, and as he cooks and prepares a meal for the kids, is that, even if they're not appreciative of the vegetables and the healthy dinners that we're providing for them, we take that moment every night to facilitate family. And so the goal is to talk about what's happening in our day, especially when people are at school and are at work all day. What's happening in our lives? What was good? What was bad? What are we struggling with? What didn't we like?
That's what we tell the kids. We tell them dinner is so you can eat and talk about your day. And then anything that comes from that, So some dinners are really like great, like festive bonding times. Others feel like a battlefield a little bit, but the consistency of it really helps. So, and I think that's interesting though. Like you can gather together, as a family, ritually like we do, but you could do it without food. But there's something about the food that makes it the medium for the bonding that takes place around it.
Well, and when I look back at my childhood, that's where some of my most vivid and my fondest memories are. It's around the table. And it's sharing certain foods and dishes from, both of, regions in Italy where my parents and grandparents were from, things that my mom made that we loved. And it was the connection with family, but it was always associated with food, where food has, it leaves a taste, it leaves a memory. There's something special there. I remember my mom in the kitchen cooking for us and my dad cooking for us. And so, there's something like warm about that. It kind of changes something. If you sit at a table and the table is empty and you're talking, it's a different experience. And if you think about that with when I meet a friend for coffee, right? We sit at a table at Starbucks, but like we're sharing this cup of coffee and it changes it a little bit.
Right. So that's what we want to focus on today is the role that food or drink kind of plays in these relationships, these bonds that we're forging with others in all kinds of shapes and ways.
So like, what does food do? That's kind of like the big question is, food is more than just about hunger and survival. Last week we were talking about, what was the pyramid? Maslow's hierarchy, right? And that, there's basic needs to be met like food, water, shelter. So we're kind of moving past that as just like something we need to survive. I know that there are people out there who like do not enjoy food and they could care less about food and experiencing and tasting and flavors, but the sharing of food has always been a big part of humanity. Like even if you're going back centuries, right? People, food, connection, gathering.
Yeah, so this is one of those like psychological just elements of humans and of human society for thousands of years. And the way it manifests can be slightly different. It's still very much present today. And obviously a big part of our lives, but it's important to kind of recognize like the role that it's not just there, and it's not even there accidentally. But the more I think we're aware of it, then the more we can kind of just leverage it and even be grateful for the role that food and drink plays.
Yeah, if you think about it, like with food, we make friends, right? Like we invite people over and we share a meal with them. When you're dating someone, right? How often do you go out to dinner? Like food is an essential part of like establishing relationships with people. It's over food that we count our blessings often and talk about how grateful we are when you think about Thanksgiving, right? There's a meal kind of surrounding that.
Right. Can you imagine Thanksgiving without a meal? I mean, that's really what it is. And so it's like this ritualized gathering. We gather together.
Did you sing that last time when we had a Thanksgiving episode?
I don't know, but it's the only Thanksgiving song. Okay, but and can you imagine just inviting people over and be like, come around and just sit around my table? But like you said before, like it feels empty without something there, whether it's a light snack or a drink in everyone's hand or a meal.
Yeah. And if you think about it, our kids take note of these things. If you think about when kids play, right? They have kids play around like kitchen centers and food, right? They make mud pies. They host tea parties. They trade snacks at lunch, right? Like that's how they like gain friends and that's how they understand relationships. It's like they play food and they play mealtime because there's some kind of magical connection that happens in that, right? Even with when we celebrate our kids, whether it's a baseball victory or loss, it's with the snacks afterwards. When it's a
Yeah,
birthday
it doesn't
party,
matter
it's
what happens at the game.
that's
The
all
snack
about the
afterwards
snacks.
is really the highlight.
So we use food to mark celebrations. We use food to offer comfort. But being fed, just food, isn't the same as being nourished. And so there's this connection around food that helps nourish us and nurture us if we pay attention to like what we're doing when we celebrate, when we offer comfort, when we gather.
Yeah, I'd call it a kind of social glue or a kind of medium through which bonds are formed a little bit more tightly. So we did this, a few years ago at the school. There was some initiative. We were trying to get, more students into advanced placement classes, and for a lot of parents who aren't as familiar with the educational system, that can be like a scary step. So one of the things that we did was we invited these families in the evening to the school where they had food available, and we sat down at like these multiple like circular tables and really just shared a meal with these families. And instead of having this big intimidating like presentation, it was really just like over some pasta and some cake and some coffee that we just talked to them about what their aspirations were for their students. I was looking at this historically too, because I think obviously we'll talk a lot about what food and drink mean for us today, but it's not like it comes out of nowhere. And as we said, like for thousands of years, the meaning of food and drink as this kind of social fabric has really been important. So I think about we think about this idea of just ancient hospitality, and you can look at this in really like in almost any culture. This idea that when a guest is received into your home, it is the guest's right to be welcomed into that home, and it is the host's privilege to do the welcoming. So it's kind of this idea of like you are now under my roof, and I'm sharing food with you, but along with that means that you're kind of like you're one of us, in that setting. And once the guest leaves the home, maybe that changes. But once you're under my roof and once you're sharing my food and sharing my drink, you're one of us, and you get all of the same like access and privileges in a sense that a guest ought to have. And it is an honor to keep that custom. It's almost like this social law. Throw in my pop culture reference in Game of Thrones. They call it the guest right, and so it plays a very big role in many scenes in Game of Thrones. So many of you have seen the HBO series or read the books may remember. One of the most important ones. I'll try not to throw in any spoilers, but of course you have Catelyn Stark and Robb Stark go to the Frey household, and they weren't feeling totally secure. But as soon as they had bread and salt, they knew that they had been accepted as guests and that they would be safe in that home. Of course, it doesn't turn out totally to be true, because guest rights can be violated as well. But you think about, I think about Christianity as well, and like what is the most important symbol in Christianity? A lot of people say a cross. It's actually originally it was established as bread and wine. And so you have like the picture of the Last Supper, and even Jesus is like, do this in remembrance of me. And I think we take it literally, like you have to eat the bread and you have to drink the wine or the grape juice, depending on what church you go to. But I think it's just that idea of gathering around food. Every time that you breaking bread among close company, and every time that you're drinking wine, like think of me when you do that, I think was kind of the original communion. And now it's much more ceremonial in religious institutions, but it's kind of like this mass sharing of bread and wine together to it's not just about the consumption. There's no nutrition in that, but it is really about like reinforcing the religious value and the religious community that's there. So the list goes on, but then when you think this in about a more modern sense, there's really a lot of examples of how food and drink play a role in all kinds of interactions that we have at work. We talk about like bringing in birthday treats or going out to happy hour, or when you're on dates, or when you're visiting or being visited by friends. And when we talked about in episode 4 with the Bowmans and about the gourmet nuts, they said part of the vision is not just to provide a tasty snack, but it's to offer like one more reason to enjoy a gathering that you have with other people.
Yeah, they were very much about like the experience of gathering with people and being with people. And that was something that resonated with them. And so when they came here, we like to have people over. And when we have people over, we tend to not order a pizza or to get takeout. Like I'll spend the day like cooking for people. We'll go to the store and pick out like a specific kind of wine for that same reason. Like when we take time out of our days and our weeks and our lives to spend time with people, I often want it to be special. I don't want it just to be pizza or, something easy. Like
And that's good too, but there's something special you're saying about like have some of my food, have something from my table.
so yeah, I mean that's part of it. It's kind of like this ritual where when you like I'm welcoming people into my home and I want them to like experience what it means to be a part of our family, whether they're family or friends or even strangers. Like opening your home in a certain way and treating people a certain way to establish a connection, to establish a bond, and to let them know that they can be a part of who we are and what we're doing.
Yeah. And it feels, it's hard to describe, but to say it feels special when I'm at someone's home and, one of the first things people often do is just like offer you a drink. Like, are you thirsty? I have water, I have this or that. Or, I enjoy moments too when, like if we have a kid's friend sleep over, or just even just hanging out and we're like, okay, we're going to eat dinner. The friend is here, where we have a chance to have like that friend like sit with us. It's like, all right, so for during this time, like you're one of us. They could have been here for hours beforehand playing with one of our kids, right? But it feels different when you're part of that ceremony, that ritual, or when you have access to their food.
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple who are friends with us, and their kids are friends with one of our sons, and they're Bosnian. And so when they welcome us in, it very much feels like home. You very much feel a part of like a different culture, a different experience. They offer us things that we wouldn't normally eat, but that are like special and
But it's
important to
good. I'm
them,
like,
and
yeah,
it's
it's great.
always good. And so, like, getting to partake in something like that to me is very special, to be like let in on somebody else's ritual, even like the way that they eat, and like they feed the kids first, like we wait and have like some appetizers, then we eat a little bit later, and even just the experience of it that is different than the way that we do it
Hmm.
is just unique, and it's special every time we go there because it's unlike the way we do it, but it's just like the way that they do it, and it's very, I think it's very cool.
So one of my rules for myself actually is when I go to someone's house, if I'm offered something, then I say yes to it when it comes to food or drink. It's not 100% of the time, but don't you feel like when you say yes to someone's food, you're saying yes to them in a way?
Yeah, to who they are and where they come from.
But
And
I notice this the most with your family, like with your mom in particular, like or your grandma, maybe even more so, where it's like if I accept your food, then I am accepting you. And if you have food or if you've prepared something, or even if like we're out, and I say no to it, even if I'm polite, even if I'm stuffed, or sick or whatever, whatever, no matter what the reason is, if I say no to the offer of food, it's like I'm saying no to a piece of them.
yeah, I think I've never really thought about it that way, but I think you're 100% right.
It's disappointing because from time you have someone just kind of stop by, like even a family member, right? And their intention is not to really stay. They've got kids in the car, they got to run errands or whatever. But it feels awkward where you're like, "Can I get you something? Do you want something to eat or something to drink?" And they say no because they really don't need anything. They really don't want anything. it feels like you're missing out on an important exchange.
Well, it's part of that notion of like hospitality
Hmm.
and welcoming someone into your home, right? Like someone stops by and they're like afraid to leave the front porch and step in because stepping in like kind of brings you in further. And right, that's not the intention. I'm just dropping this off or whatever.
Hmm.
But now I try, and when I do drop something off at someone's house, like if they invite me in, I'll walk in for 5 minutes, and just be a part of what's there.
Yeah. Or like, I mean, you're again with your parents, like we've been there, and again, like just like we're riding our bikes by or something, and they want to offer us something, and it's kind of insulting to them if we're like, no, like we really don't need anything. Actually, we're going. They're like, oh boy, gee, okay, well, all right, I guess I'll see you. I guess you got important things to do, right? But that's 100% true, and I feel like many of us feel that way too, because there's something about that exchange of food. And I also think like there's other kinds of exchanges. I was reading in a book called The Gift, which is a really fascinating look at like gifts and exchanges and what that does in different cultures across time. But it talks a lot about food and a lot about hospitality, and there's other kinds of exchange that go like, imagine when you show up to someone else's house, we bring sometimes like flowers, but sometimes we'll bring like a dessert or a sale, even if it's not meant to be a potluck. Like you feel a little awkward sometimes just showing up empty-handed, because it kind of symbolizes the relational exchange that's going on, right? It's solidified through the exchange of these items, and especially through the exchange of food.
Well, and I think, when I think about my parents, and you're right, like we're on our bikes in the neighborhood. My parents don't live very far. We'll stop by. You guys want a bottle of water? No, I'm fine. And you're right. They're kind of like, oh, well, they
Oh, sorry,
want,
we have kids. They're like, oh, can I have a snack? I want
yeah, I need a
crackers, a
juice
juice
box.
box.
Do you
Yeah.
have a freeze
So at
pop?
least
Can I
they
have
give
some
them
ice
something.
cream?
Yeah.
Right. So there's always something. But I think that might be a generational thing now that I'm thinking about it, because, for them, it's welcoming us over, no matter if they've seen us 3 times that day or not. Welcoming us into the fold, into their home, offering us what we want. But our generation, food is not ritualized as much as it used to be. It's this like quick exchange. So, with breakfast, right, we often make ourselves a protein shake or a smoothie and drink it in the car. We don't like sit down and enjoy the meal with other people, like around breakfast time. It's like this quick, I just need to like fuel myself to get to work or to get to school. Right at lunch, when you're at work and you eat lunch, how many times do you like shove a sandwich or some leftovers in your mouth, hovered over your computer screen, like
Oh
working through
yeah.
your lunch, right? You're not taking time to like take a break and spend time with people that you work with and look them in the eye and relax and talk about something other than work.
Right, and that's something a lot of people do, and it hasn't very often been me. But they will like go out to lunch daily or go down to the cafeteria daily and like share that time together.
And then the same thing with dinner, depending on what time you get home from work and what time your son or daughter has a sporting event or a family activity or something else that you're scheduled to go. How many times do we quickly run through a drive through or pick something up or eat a sandwich in shifts in the car between baseball games? And so, if you think about meal times as rituals and what that ritual of breaking bread really stands for and the meaning behind it, like our generation loses a lot in that transaction. So, we're just looking to like eat and drink when we can, if we can, how it fits into our schedule, instead of carving out this like very you know wholesome time to take a break from our screens, to take a break from work, and to find connection. And so food is more than just eating something in the car on the way to the next thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's plenty of times where just that, like looking at food strictly as this utilitarian necessity is okay. Um, I think that's if that's the only role that it plays, then you're missing out. But I think people who are busy, 6 nights of the week, on the seventh night, still are, when they want to get together with another couple or another family, like it's still like, oh, let's go meet at this restaurant or let's go share these drinks over here. So I mean, I don't think it has to be like this daily ritual, but I do think that just even recognizing kind of that special step you take in a relationship when you share food and drink together is in itself like a step forward.
Okay. So where do you want to go from here?
Well, I feel like you and I recognize the importance of it, especially with like our evening family dinners. But I still feel like there's probably a little room to even like just to grow with this, to just like I think it's I find myself struggling to articulate some of the power that I really feel like food and drink has for helping like materialize some true bonding in relationships. So I think just understanding it a little bit more and trying to practice this in different ways could be really useful.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, what are your final thoughts or takeaways on that?
I think part of the takeaways for me is that bringing meaning to mealtime is important. And so, not every meal has to be some sit down, big, grand affair where you're eating in a formal dining room or having a fancy meal. But we just need to kind of adopt some simple rituals in a good way to like reconnect to food. The point of any ritual is to relax and to connect. And connection is often what's times missing from our meals. And
Mm-hmm.
so, just thinking about connection. And when we gather with people, like, think about ways to do it maybe with food in an intentional way. So I think
Mm-hmm.
I have like kind of four takeaways that go along with this that we can kind of talk through, unless you wanted to hit something else.
Well, I just have one thought. I'll say it before I lose it, then we'll hit your takeaways. Is that when it comes to our food, we can think about maybe opportunities where we can add food into the equation to add that important dynamic. But we can also think about what other elements we can take out of the equation that are getting in the way of what food might offer. For example, we haven't really done this that often, but just the idea of like watching TV while you eat. So if you're with your family, but there's a TV, and so there's a screen that you're all paying attention to, or maybe nowadays everybody has their own separate screen, like at the table, right? That's something that could be taken out of that, so that food can do what it's meant to do, which is gather together and to bond. So
Right.
it's like taking those barriers out.
One thing to do it over a baseball game at a bar or over the Super Bowl, which is probably the only times we've really ever watched TV during dinner, and we try and keep screens away. But I think it's,
Hmm.
sometimes there's a time and a place for that.
Yeah.
But in order to facilitate connection, it's really to push those
Right. So
barriers
just
away.
being conscious of how can I add food in, but also are there other elements that I can take out to really like leverage the full impact of food and drink.
All right, so if we're looking at bringing meaning to mealtime, I kind of have four things that we can kind of consider. And I think this really goes for anybody anywhere because you can simplify this to fit any scenario. Doesn't matter where you live or what kind of food you're using. But the first is to create space. So having a dedicated space, and it doesn't have to be fancy, but a space that creates an intentional space and a break from work, play, and other distractions. And so for some people, that's at their kitchen counter, right? We like live at our kitchen counter. That's where breakfast and lunch happen. And so it doesn't have to have some kind of fancy table that you've spent thousands of dollars on in a fancy dining room. It's just where's your spot to gather to eat,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of making sure that everything else is put away. The second thing is to prepare. And this is, just from an article I read, it says, as it turns out, cooking, especially when done for others, comes with some positive psychological benefits. Performing an act for another human being, like cooking for them, is a form of altruism, and altruism can make people feel happy and connected to others.
Mm-hmm.
So when you make dinner for the family, and I'm not making dinner, it means a lot to me that like you would take the time to prepare something nutritious for the family.
But this quote is talking about the cook, not the recipient of it.
I know, but
Mm-hmm.
I often cook.
Right.
Okay, so like I don't mind cooking for my family, even though the kids will complain about the vegetable choice or whatnot. So I get a kick out of cooking for you guys, but in the
Mm-hmm.
same way, when you cook for me, it's meaningful. It's not like you just picked up something through a drive-through and
It's a
you're putting it in
gesture.
front of
Yeah.
me, but just the gesture of it, and taking the time to prepare. Right, a lot of us meal plan at the beginning of the week, or even cook multiple meals, and like we eat them through the week. Like preparing food can be part of the enjoyment for other people and part of the connection.
Yeah.
The third is to share. Schedule time to eat in the company of others. Serve meals family style because that also reinforces connection when you have to pass plates to one another and ask someone to to take something that they've made. It reinforces kind of just this whole mentality of being together.
Well, then it's truly shared, and I think that that's important. Is the idea of this shared experience where you have a plate with a certain kind of food in it, and you both take from the same plate, right? Then you're then having the same experience.
Yeah, I'm doing a wedding on Saturday, and we were going over the details. And they're doing a fully outdoor wedding, and they have catering staff come in, but instead of serving a plated dish, it's being served family style. And it just totally goes kind of with the whole look and feel of the wedding, the way that the whole day will progress, and it's really this coming together and this sharing of the food together.
I like that. And then you can have more or less of what you want or don't want.
Well, but
More asparagus, pass it this way.
but think about
steak, you keep that.
this is not we I've always been served food family style for dinner, but I know in some households they like this is your plate, this is what you eat, like, and it's given to you, but this giving and taking of more and asking, like, there's that builds something. It builds a little trust, a little intimacy, like everybody is sharing the experience together instead of someone managing the experience.
Yeah.
So that's important. And so for if you're the kind of person who eats at your desk alone or, hunched over your computer for lunch, like how can you strategically like share a meal with your coworkers or take time away from work, right? In a separate space. And how can you prepare your own food or use food that has been prepared for you to enjoy throughout the day? So like this doesn't just have to be mealtime, like at dinner with your family. Think about this, as part of your breakfast or as your lunch or with other people in your life that aren't your immediate
Or
family.
your kids in the school cafeteria.
Right. And the last one is to practice mindfulness. Take a break from everything else, from screens, from work. Enjoy the food and enjoy the company. Go slow. Savor. Nourish yourself with not only food, but with the people around you. And I think that's the thing we forget, that sometimes we have to do it quickly to get on to the next thing. But can we like have a more European laid back feel where it's like, we're going to enjoy this food right now and we're not going to worry about whatever else it is for 30 minutes and just have fun.
Right. Yeah. And I know we do that. I'm thinking especially, like, we'll do dinners. We've talked about that. But every once in a while, to mark an occasion or just for the heck of it, we'll do what we just call family breakfast. Because normally our breakfasts are more piecemeal. Like, we kind of eat when we want or when the kids ask for something. But to actually sit down and gather together as a family for breakfast is kind of a unique experience. But I also think about like birthdays or other like celebrations. When we had our anniversary, we had a family breakfast just to kind of celebrate as a family together. When the kids have birthdays, they often ask for a specific food to sell. Like you get to choose the dinner. If you're lucky, maybe you get a nice treat in the morning, like a donut or something that we all sit down and share to kind of communally celebrate together.
Right.
As well.
I make cinnamon rolls or like whatever that is, but it's like, yeah, they get to pick something special and we do it together as a family.
And everybody
and
has
we partake.
It. It's not like if it's your birthday, you get the one donut, but we all enjoy that celebration together.
Yeah, and I think that's part of food has to do with an experience, and celebrating your birthday isn't fun if you're the only one eating a donut or you're the only one with the cinnamon roll. It's like you want the people around you to enjoy it with you and to do it and to celebrate with you.
Yeah. All right, well, those are many of our initial thoughts about food, and as you can tell, it plays a special role in our lives, and we hope it plays a special role in your life as well, too. So if you know anyone who loves food and loves good company and good bonding experiences along with that, go ahead and share this episode with them. And if you haven't made your way to iTunes yet, go ahead there and leave us a 5-star rating and a review, and hit up therelentlesspursuitpodcast.com for more information and to subscribe to our email list. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you again next week. Thanks so much for listening to today's show. We hope you will use this conversation as a starting point for your own. We hope you're encouraged to think and act more intentionally.
If you want to learn more, you can visit our website, therelentlesspursuitpodcast.com, where you can find notes on today's show, plus additional blog posts, and you can subscribe to our free members list.
Please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends.
Facebook and Instagram are 2 great places to connect with us for daily doses of our quotable quotes, behind the scenes, and real-time photos, videos, and challenges.
Until next time, let us know how you are taking life off autopilot
And relentlessly pursuing what matters.